Welcome to Flex with Purpose, the podcast where we explore what it means to move toward our highest potential, not for personal gain or applause, but to strengthen others and make the world a better place. I'm your host, Schalee Sanchez, and I am so glad that you're here. Each episode is a conversation with someone who lives boldly, leads authentically, and lets humility guide their impact. Cheryl Carrell is with us today. She is a fantastic woman who is extremely impressive, but also has an incredibly humble heart. She embodies all of the qualities that we are talking about on this podcast, and I am thrilled that she is with us today. She has a wealth of information that she could share with us, but you're going to get to hear a little bit of her story. I know that you will be encouraged and inspired. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
So, as we get started in this conversation about leading with humility, living with humility, allowing humility to influence us and the impact that we have in the world, one of the things that is kind of a misconception about humility is that in order to be humble, you can't talk about your achievements. You can't brag, we'll put it that way. And it really is something that actually is a way to inspire and encourage other people to reach their full potential when we allow them to see the things that God has enabled us to accomplish. So I want to
Absolutely.
give you an opportunity to celebrate your wins with us and some of those meaningful moments when you achieve something that was really significant in your life.
Yeah. Um, there are definitely a lot of things I could point to, and I love how you're approaching this because it's something I've definitely wrestled with as far as how to handle feeling like I can celebrate those things. And the way that I've done that is acknowledging that it's a gift from the Lord. He's totally provided this for me. It's something I wasn't even looking for. Um, and so, for a quick backstory, the thing that kind of got me into even competing and really having fitness as such a huge part of my life was it started a little traumatically. My dad passed away suddenly when I was pregnant with my fourth child. And then just after he was born, I had I guess while I was pregnant, several friends started telling me about this fitness group called Camp Gladiator. And it sounded so neat and fun, but I was like, there's no way I can start that when I'm, 7 months pregnant. But it all kind of tied together when I realized I started when my baby was 7 weeks old because a friend had told me about it and there was this $4 birthday special for the month. And I was like, okay, for $4, even as a busy mom with 4 young kids and homeschooling and all the things I had on my plate, it felt like I could try it for a few days. And what I didn't know was how the Lord was just putting that in my lap as an outlet, both physically to process the emotion, to process the fact that I just needed to get away from everybody else needing me, have somebody else tell me what to do, and then also be getting my body in the best shape of my life. That wasn't my initial goal. But then as I was sharing my testimony one time with somebody, I realized that when my dad passed away due to health issues because he had not taken great care of his body, it made me all the more motivated to want to be a better example for my own kids and family and be around for them for the long haul. So it was kind of a multifaceted thing. I wasn't searching it out, and the Lord just provided and kept providing many other things along the way. So that's kind of how I started the journey, I guess. And then as far as wins along the way, through my trainer and other friends that I met through Camp Gladiator, I started competing, which was not really on my radar. I hadn't even thought of it as a thing. And within my first year of CG, my trainer, my coach was like, you've got to do this. You'd be great. And my very first taste of doing a CG Games prelims, I was like, oh man, I feel just like a kid. This is so fun. And the obstacle courses and all the different things. And so then I continued to participate in that for the next, I guess, about 12. I think I was looking back. My first one I did was 2014. And then the last one I did was 2023. The only one I missed was during 2020 because it was virtual and I didn't want to do a virtual competition. But otherwise, the Lord allowed me to podium many of those races, both as a team and individual. Both experiences were incredible as team or individual athlete. And just the community and the atmosphere and the having to dig into my the Lord is my strength, just that when those things were so hard and challenging, it wasn't anything I could do on my own. And it was just the full reliance on Him carrying me through. So all those things pieced together were some of the ways I got started and some of the big highlights for me. And also the Lord provided for my kids through as a homeschool mom. If I won in one of those races, it helped pay for my kids' braces. So it was kind of motivating for me in that way too.
That is awesome to be able to see the progression and see that it really was God inviting you into this journey with Him, and that He had some very specific reasons for giving you this, not just for yourself, but for your family, and then for a countless number other people whose lives have been touched because of who you are in those competitions. And I can speak that from experience because I got to compete in the same heat with you at the
That was
CG
so
Games
fun.
finals in 2023, and getting to
Mhm.
spend a Saturday with you and really see your heart and experience the encouragement that you give to everyone around you and the way that you lift others up, and seeing the way that you interact with your husband and your kids. It
Mm.
was so encouraging, and I know that everywhere that you've gotten to go, you mentioned Camp Gladiator and CG Games, but I know that you've had platforms far beyond that that you didn't mention, that God has given you opportunities to touch so many other people, with His love through those competitions. So it's really
Yes.
encouraging.
I've really enjoyed doing I've done some Spartan races, and that was kind of the first mix of a race where you've got running, but stuff mixed in. I always, when I had young kids, it was like, okay, pushing a jog stroller was kind of the only thing I knew to do that I could fit into my schedule and for free. Um, but eventually it was like, oh man, running to a destination is really exciting. Like doing an obstacle course race, you have all these little things that are fun along the way that break it up. And I really oddly enjoy things like climbing and doing things that you did when you were a kid and you don't get to do as much as an adult. And then hybrid fitness came along with like High Rocks and DECA, which are 8 or 10 stations mixed with running, a combination of strength and endurance. And that was right up my alley. I guess between 2020 and 2023 were the main years that I did those races. And so those were really fun experiences as well. The reason I've kind of stopped is I've had some major arthritis in my feet the past 2 years. So I haven't done races really in 2024 and 2025. But before that, that's been some of the main ones I've done. And I also got to be on a reality TV show with some of my Camp Gladiator friends and coaches. And so that was another really cool experience.
I appreciate you sharing that and being open to what God made possible in your life and what continues to be a part of your life. I know that that has changed a little bit. We shared on, a conversation preparing for this that that has is looking very different for you now, but that you
Yes.
still have a lot of opportunity to be a person who is influencing others with your own health and fitness and what you've learned and what you continue to do. So I'm really excited to get into this next little section of talking about what a typical day is for you now, which I know that's kind
Yeah,
of a trick question to ask you to share a typical
for
day
sure.
because I'm sure each day is very dynamic and the
It
things
is.
that you're involved with are, quite varied. But just tell us a little bit about what your life is like now.
Yeah. So my kids are now kind of half grown. Two are grown and launched. I have a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old. And when I started this fitness journey, they were, I guess, 7 and 5. So that's kind of wild. When I started really kind of being all in, I had little bitties. And now my youngest is 13. So it's exciting and different, but we do homeschool. And so that's been a piece that has been tricky all along. And I've always said when I'm talking with people, it's about how we prioritize, because, or what we make space for. It's always going to be hard, and there's always going to be a lot going on. And over the past, I guess, 5, 6 years, I've started both fitness coaching and nutrition coaching. That has been another sweet thing that the Lord has put in my lap. I did have to work for it. It was hard to fit in studying and getting my certifications around homeschooling my kids and everything, but I'm so thankful that I did because it has been a gift to be able to continue to use these things the Lord has given me and help others. I especially like focusing on women and tend to have a pretty big focus between hormones and perimenopause, but also pregnant women and all the things that just women's health and fitness in general. I like helping everybody, but that's kind of tended to be the main place that I've been right now. So a typical day is homeschool mom life. My boys are involved in a few different things outside of our home. So either it's going to the community college for classes for dual credit, working, doing sports. Even as homeschoolers, we're involved in sports. And then we're part of a co-op where I teach. I teach a Toastmasters speech class one day a week. And so there's a lot of different hats during the week, but a lot of it is kind of an Uber mom thing. And so prioritizing where to fit everything, I tend to do my coaching or training early in the morning because right now it's football season, so I don't have as much space in the evenings and in the afternoons. Um, so yeah, that's always been a little tricky with having kids and wanting to be really involved as a homeschool mom is like, what windows do I fit these things? So sometimes it looks like eating in the car or lots of batch cooking where I prep meals and things on one day all at once, and then we just kind of eat off of them depending on the season. But that's I also make everything from scratch. Probably about 90% of what we consume is made in our home from scratch, and so that takes time too. And so fitting that somewhere just takes prioritizing. So
Well, it is something that you mentioned, so I want to give you a chance real quick to let women know who want to connect with you. What would be the best way to do that? Can they find you on social media, or how can they learn from you the things that you're sharing in regards to women's health and fitness?
yeah. So that's one thing I will say over the past few years, I did back away from social media because I felt like I was wasting too much time myself, getting distracted. But I do check the messages regularly and I regularly message people through. I'm on Instagram and Facebook just as my name, Cheryl, and it's Carol with an E, Carrell. Um, and then email is great too. So if people, if you wanted, I could give you that. If people want to reach out to you, I can give you, I mean, you have my email, but either any of those ways are great.
Awesome, because I know that as people are hearing and listening, they might have some questions that are personal to them, or they might want to ask you about something else. So I want to give them an
Yeah.
opportunity. And of course, anybody can reach out to me and I can connect you with Cheryl for sure. So,
Yes.
as you're talking about being a mom of four, I want to hear a little bit from you in regards to, was it ever a struggle for you to feel like you were being selfish by setting aside time to work out?
Yes.
What was that tension like for you, and how have you navigated that?
I have wrestled with this and I have directly talked to my kids about it multiple times and even my adult daughters. Do you regret me doing this? Do you feel like I took too much time? Because especially when it comes to competing, you've got to give at least an hour a day. If it's really intense, high level like what I was doing. I was competing in some world championships for all of those races I mentioned earlier, at least at a national level, if not at an international level in several of those races. And so if I wasn't giving at least an hour of work and then, fitting in recovery and things like that, I couldn't really keep up the level that I was at. And so that looked like usually sacrificing sleep because I didn't want to sacrifice time with my family. So most of the time that meant like 4 or 5 a.m. is when I was getting those things in order to be able to shower and get going right away, which did affect my marriage in the sense that like every morning I'm out of the bed before my husband was awake, and thankfully he was a huge supporter of me and he saw what a gift and blessing it was for me to have that as an outlet. And he loved that I was doing it. And he saw that it was also a neat ministry opportunity that the Lord had given me. And so
Mhm.
definitely has always been a huge supporter, but it something has to give, right? So sleep was one of the main things. And as I've hit middle age now, in my mid 40s, I am definitely trying to prioritize sleep better than I used to because I have been more deeply affected by it this season of my life by not having as much sleep. So I still get up fairly early, but I'm training less intensely in this season. So it's not quite as, detrimental, I guess. But
You touched on that really well about having to adjust things and having to, you know, give and take with what was priority for you in the moment, but that you made sure that they were on board with you about it, that it
Yes.
wasn't something that you were doing against their will or, in opposition to them, that it was something that they were able to fully support you in and encourage and cheer you on. And so I think that that's really a key part of the relationships that we have not suffering when
Right.
we are competing,
And not to
right?
say that I
So it
always did it perfectly either, right? I think there was definitely seasons where, I mean, I know that I was competing in the last few years that I was competing, my kids were older, and I knew that they would be okay. In fact, my boys looked forward to having that hour that I would go work out in the middle of the day sometimes, because for a little while I needed to work out in a gym that had equipment and sleds and different things, where needed specific space, and it was only available in certain times during the middle of the day. And so I would get the kids set up with their work that they could do on their own. And then I would say, okay, you can have an hour to play a video game or something like that. So they were like, Mom, are you going to go work out? They were excited. But then another part of me was like, oh, am I neglecting them in some way? So it was always this tearing feeling, right? It's definitely a push pull. And I also think that it's good for them, though, to recognize not everything revolves around them, right? So as a mom, recognizing my kids can also make some sacrifices for me. And what's the balance of that, right? Always life is that tension of what is this like? Has it become an idol to me? Something that I'm putting so much stock, so much time, and so much thought into that it's consuming me? Or is it a blessing? Is it a gift? Is it life giving, right? So that balance and constantly keeping that in check is, just like most things in life, we have to keep balance.
Yeah, it's something that you've already brought up, the priorities, but now it's really highlighting that aspect of this whole journey. We rely on God's grace because we're not going to do it perfectly. And it is going to be a matter of us learning and growing and seeing what
Yes.
works and what doesn't work and being willing to say, you know
Mhm.
what, that wasn't the best decision. Let's change this and do it differently.
Right.
And I see that in you, which is a part of humility, right? Being able to say, "You know what? This is what I thought was gonna be best, but
Mm.
we need to adjust and do this
Right.
differently."
For sure. I always say that there's always seasons. I think there's something when we're young where we have this idea that when I get to this certain point in my life, I will have arrived. And there's always just a new season. No matter what, whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you have kids, whether you have 1 kid or 5 kids, it doesn't matter. The seasons that we're in are always changing, and we have to kinda change along with them or we get stuck, right? But also, there's never just like this time where we've arrived. There's just something new, and there's something to be joyful about and something that might be really, really hard at just about every season of life. And so, just looking for God's grace in that, like what you were saying, right? He's so good to provide so many neat blessings for us. And then also just holding on to the hope that we can have through him through the hard things as well. So
So, as you're talking about your kids and the dynamic of that as you would train, one of the things that I had come to mind, and correct me if this is wrong, but I think I remember that one of your daughters competed with you at a High Rocks event. Is that right?
yes, that was so, so sweet. Yes, in 2023, I was supposed to do a team with a friend, and they were injured and not able to do it at the last minute. And so I asked if I could put my daughter in. She was only 16 at the time, but she had just finished doing cross country. So she had been running, and we talked about it off and on whether she would want to do it with me. And so she hadn't really been training the stations a lot or doing tons of strength. But the couple weeks leading up to it, I brought her into the gym with me and introduced her to how to do all the stations. And I said, you just run with me and I'll do most of the work. But I let her do about, 10 to 25%. So she got a taste of it and a good feel for it. And it was so, so special. We just loved it. So, yes, that was really a sweet highlight that I got to race with my daughters.
Are there other moments like that with your kids as you've walked through this journey and run through this journey of fitness? Are there other moments like that that were just really maybe even unexpected or, like that one wasn't necessarily what the original plan had been, but moments where your kids got to be a part of it in a way that really was just a special moment for you?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting because I've had this different approach where I think I've wanted to model it for my kids, but also I've wanted to have like early in the morning, 5 a.m., I'm working out by myself. They're not always with me. But there were definitely seasons where either I would do a Saturday workout and they would come along and do it with me, or there would be a 5 a.m. and my son would be like, "Hey, can you wake me up? My early riser. Can you wake me up and bring me with you?" And so I'd bring him with me sometimes, early morning parking lot workouts. But then when I mentioned that race show, so random, but I was on this show called Spartan Ultimate Team Challenge. It was the producers of Ninja Warrior. It was only a couple seasons, but some of my teammates were comprised of some of my coaches and their family from CG. And one of their sisters ended up getting pregnant and not being able to compete. So they asked me at the last minute to join the team. And it ended up, we got flown out to Atlanta, and the whole thing was filmed over the course of a week. And they put us up in a hotel, and it felt like summer camp. It was amazing. We all got beat up. It was hard, but it was really neat. But my family drove out. My mom joined my husband, and they road tripped all the way out to Atlanta. And the races were between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So middle of the night with all my little bitty kids. My youngest was 4 at the time. I guess they were like 4, 6, 7, and 9, something like that. And so my sweet husband and mom brought the kids out, and they wanted to be there, and it was just so special. It was really hard for everybody, but so special. And we have some really sweet film from it because it was on TV, as well as just some photos of us interacting as we won 3. We actually ended up finishing second overall out of the entire race. One of our teammates got injured and was not able to do the third and fourth races. So they gave us a sub, and his endurance just kind of wasn't up to par. We didn't have the same chemistry, and so we ended up finishing second overall. But long story short is that my family was there for all 4 of these races as we crossed the finish line, raw emotion and
Aw.
stuff. And it was really, really special to share that, because a lot of times for races, when I would do anything outside of CG, my family would stay home because of the logistics. I had little kids. It was a lot for my husband to have to juggle everybody, to pay for everybody to get into a racing environment. And then it's just a loud, stimulating environment. So I would just go real quick. That was like my thing to go do, and then come back, and I would tell everybody about it, and they were proud of me. But a lot of the time they weren't with me outside of CG games. So it was really special to have them there for that. So definitely had some neat highlights. And then as they got older, just all the things. I mean, being able to go paddleboarding together, being able to go on bike rides, and hey, mom, can you go on a run with me, or give me some pointers for this, fitness thing. My youngest recently learned how to do a backflip on the trampoline, and he had me helping him figure that out. I used to do gymnastics as a kid, and so it's sweet to be able to be active with my kids. I can still do a backflip on the trampoline, and my kids are like, my mom's so cool. So it's sweet. It's fun to be able to, have those shared experiences.
That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's really cool that those kind of moments happen. And as you think back on how incredible it was to get to share that moment with them, I'm curious to know, has there ever been a moment on your journey where you just wanted to quit, when it
Mm,
felt like, okay, this is too much. I'm not going to continue doing this. Um, were there ever any of those moments, and what helped you push through those moments?
mm.
What helped you decide to keep going?
That's a good question. I kind of have this saying that I teach my kids. Then we say, Carols aren't quitters. So, although in the middle of a really hard race or a really tough workout, I might have this feeling of wanting to quit. That's not a particular struggle that I've really had, but more the wrestling of, is this best for everybody involved? Should I still be doing this? Kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, where it's almost this like guilt thing, like, is this the right thing? Is it the best for everybody? And then the other thing is, a lot of injuries have come up along the way. And so that's my other piece, is like, should I quit because it's not good for my body? It's not worth the time and the money and the effort that I have to put in to go into so much physical therapy, or, paying for extra shoes or whatever those things are. Which is kind of leads me to where I am right now. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to compete anymore. I joke that I'm retired all the time, but I know that I'm young, and I hope that as my kids get a little bit older and I can put a little bit more time and money back in this bucket, that I might be able to go there. But I feel really at peace right now with being able to coach and being able to pour into other people. And the Lord has opened a lot of other doors that I've been able to be a part of. by stepping back a little bit in this area because I'm not spending as much focused time training to compete. So it's still been sweet to see how
Okay.
he's given me a lot of neat opportunities. So
I have one more question for you related to being a mom before we move on to the next part of the conversation. But as you think about, these last, I guess, 11 years, or how long has
yeah,
it been now?
13.
You said you started
Yeah,
okay.
13 when
Um,
my youngest was a baby. Yeah.
okay, so when you think back over the past 13 years that you've been competing and been in fitness and also been a mom, how has your fitness and the competing that you've done, how has that influenced you as a mom, for better
Mm.
or worse? I'm curious to know what ripple effects you've seen of either what the Lord has taught you as you've trained for these different competitions and how that has been connected to you as a mom, or any other things that you could share about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. A couple things that pop into my mind, first of all, would be organization. I think it's been helpful in the sense that I had to prioritize, okay, I need to make sure I have time to fit meals in and fit cleaning in and fit all these other things in. So knowing that I was expecting that as a piece of my day, I just knew that I started my day Monday through Friday and sometimes Saturdays for a while when I was competing. That was just like brushing my teeth. And so everyone
Mhm.
expected it, and so that was helpful as well. Everyone knew that mom was exercising to start the day. Um, so it was great to kind of just have that expectation for everybody to be on the same page. Um, so as far as benefits, I think it helped my mental sanity a lot because I was able to give more to my kids when I wasn't giving from an empty cup. I was able to start my day by being filled, physically moving, and then I usually would spend the time driving to and from, listening to my audio Bible, praying by myself in the car, maybe listening to some worship music, and just kind of centering myself and getting myself right with the Lord and ready to give. And I think that's something as moms that we tend to neglect a lot of the times is I think self-care can kind of go a little too far sometimes, but I do think it is so important that we give enough to ourselves so that we can give for the most, 90% of the time or more we're giving, right? And so if we're not making sure that we're in the good shape, the best shape that we can be to be giving mentally and physically, it takes a toll. And so that I think was a huge benefit for me was both learning how to prioritize really well because I wanted to fit it in, and then also being able to kind of have that morning start to my day. For me, that's where it fit best. Um, and so I was able to be physically active and then also spend that time just with the Lord before kind of pouring out for a lot of the day. So,
Definitely resonates with me, and I have seen that same dynamic in my own life, how that actually made it possible for me to give more fully.
mm.
And so I think that that's an encouragement to other mothers to not feel like they're taking away from their kids by spending time to exercise and work out, and that it actually is a way that they're gonna be able to be filled in order to give, at a higher level,
And
to
it's
their
amazing
families.
how positive cycles work the same as negative cycles work. And so when you get in a positive cycle of a habit, whether it's with food or with fitness or with trying to journal or read the Bible or, whatever that is, whatever that goal is, when we get in a positive cycle, it's a lot easier to keep it reinforced, especially with a little bit of accountability. And the same goes for negative cycles. And so for me, once I got into that positive cycle, it was a lot easier to maintain it. But one of the things I see as a coach with nutrition and fitness is that it is so hard to get started. And so one of the things I did that I learned early on also was the night before, I would people say, set your intention for the day. I would set out my shoes and set out my clothes down to my socks and underwear. I would fill my water bottle. I would have every single item that I needed ready to go the night before because I needed to roll off that bed, go to the bathroom, and get in the car with nothing else, And eventually I learned I needed 5 minutes to foam roll or something else to do a little more body prep before I just hit the pavement. But those sorts of things, just learning what rhythm you need to make it happen, to, like I say, setting yourself up for success. So whatever area that is, it could be fitness, it could be, like I said, meal prepping. It's the same thing. We have to make that a habit, whether it's setting a phone reminder or, whatever that looks like. So I think some of those things, it helped me create those in a lot of areas of my life. And it's been really helpful in a lot of, it's bled over into all the areas of my life, I think so.
And as you were bringing up the tip of getting ready before, the night before to set yourself up for success, I was also thinking about how you've mentioned this already, but community and
Mhm.
exercising with a group, having that accountability is also one of the things that has really kept me going and
Yes.
actually made it possible for me to get started was having people that I could work out with. And I think that that's something really special, the connections that are made
Shared
go those
experiences.
friendships blossom, beyond the workout sessions, but,
That's
I
right.
think that that's important as well.
It is. Having shared experiences, we're made for community. As humans, God designed us. And I know not everybody listening would maybe is on the same page as you and I are, but in Genesis, in the very beginning of the Bible, God said the first thing he said wasn't good, was that it's not good for man to be alone. He made us, he designed us to be in relationship with other people. And it shows over and over, no matter what thing, whether we're celebrating something great or whether we're going through something hard, having even just one other person to give us a hug, give us an encouragement, give us a high five, cry with, be excited with, and celebrate together. It makes such a huge difference in our lives. And so, it's not just like a feeling, it's emotionally and brain chemistry and all these things that are happening. Like I was saying with the good cycle, it's the same thing. We get these good endorphins, we have these great hormones and body responses that are happening when we're doing something positive like exercising and starting our day in those kinds of ways or fitting in whatever part of our day.
Yeah, one of the things that we repeat often in Camp Gladiator is "better together," and
Right.
it's so
Yeah.
true. I
Really
love
true.
that aspect of it, the community, the relationships really do enrich our lives.
That's right.
So,
Yeah, that season was
I
a gift
want
for
I
me
want
for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that you've already touched on, but I want to help our listeners identify and notice the ways that humility has influenced your decisions and
Mm.
enhanced your relationships specifically, and the ways that it's kept you grounded through all of
Mm.
the different experiences and transitions and stages in life that you've gone through.
Mm. Yeah, I would say it's not about me, right? I think a lot of times it's easy to focus on ourselves. It's easy to focus on the why me and the woe is me and um, all of those things. But there's something about facing outward, right? We were made, like I said, for community, and that means others. And when we're others focused, it makes us feel better about ourselves. And so for me, I got married really young. So at 19, I was others focused already by getting married and had my first baby when I was 23. And I grew up in a fairly big family, so I've always been around people, had roommates or been married, and so that kind of made it easy in that sense. But it's not easy. It's very easy to be self-focused, and it takes that intentionality. It takes that daily making the choice to die to our selfish desires and be like, okay, Lord, show me what you have for me today, how I can love and serve the people that you put in my life, whatever season, stage, or phase that looks like. As I was mentioning earlier, there's always going to be a different one. And right now, as I'm in middle life now, it feels like everyone's in a crisis stage because some of us still have myself and my friends. My youngest is 13, but some of my friends still have younger kids. And then a lot of us are launching older kids, and parenting young adults is a whole new thing, right? Because you're not really parenting. It's a different relationship dynamic, but you still love and care about and want to be pouring into them. And then many of us are starting to lose parents. We have aging parents or parents that are passing away. And, um, as far as our own life, it's hard, but then a lot of our friends are going through a lot of hard. And so, as we're doing this shoulder to shoulder community with other people, we're walking through these things together. And whether it's a workout or whether it's just a friendship, whatever those relationships look like, when we are facing out and looking at other people and their needs, it's an encouragement to our own heart to remember we're not alone. We're not the only ones that go through something hard. And I know what a blessing it has been when other people have given to me in my seasons of hard. And so it makes me all the more want to be able to pour into them. So whether that's fitness or whether that's bringing somebody a meal or, what have you, depending on the different things, is definitely a joy to focus on other people. So
Thank you so much for sharing that and just beautifully showing what that looks like in your life. It's an encouragement, and I know that all of us can continue growing in that it's an ongoing journey
that's right. It never
of
ends.
increasing that. Uh,
Yeah, it definitely
so
feels
we've
weird to
got
talk
just
about humility, right? Because it's not something that it's like, am I being humble if I'm talking about it? But again, that's where it just comes from the Lord. Are we trusting that He is leading us, and are we leaning into what He's calling us to versus our own selfish desires? So sorry, I interrupted you.
that's a really good point. I'm glad that you brought that up, and learning to trust and not try to control everything ourselves
Right.
is
Yes.
really a position of humility
Mm.
and allowing, just surrendering to
That's right. That's
a
a good
plan
word.
that isn't ours,
That's right.
but is actually way better than ours, right?
Absolutely. That's right.
I want to give you a chance either to share something that has been on your heart that we haven't touched, that I didn't ask a specific question that allowed you to answer it or share, or if there's just some truth that you want to leave our listeners with today.
Yeah. I don't really have anything specific, but some things that come to mind would just be that God created each of you with a purpose. And we don't always see the big picture, but like what you were just saying, just are we surrendering that our best idea might not be the plan that God has for us, and we don't know how He's going to use a circumstance. Like, for example, my dad passing away is what led me to my fitness journey and led me to meeting this huge community, having so many opportunities. And I'm not saying that he had to pass away for that to happen, but it was orchestrated in a way that I was able to look at something hard and then see how God was able to use it and bring good out of it and sort of redeem something that was hard in my life. And so I think a lot of times we can feel stuck in our hard and stuck in a circumstance
Mm.
that feels so overwhelming and it's never going to end. So whether that's a difficult job, a difficult relationship, some stage of mothering that feels impossible and like it's going to last forever. Like I keep
Mhm.
mentioning the word seasons. And as we walk through these different seasons of life, I think my biggest thing that I've been praying for is that I would see what God has for me there and not always be looking for the next thing and missing some of the joy in the season and in the journey that I'm in the middle of. And then
Mhm.
also staying humble and looking for um, how can I be flexible to do something different than what I thought I was going to do next? I wasn't planning to quit
Mhm.
competing right now, but the Lord has put other things in my life and on my plate that I wouldn't have had the bandwidth for if I would have been competing in the way that I had been. And so I got to go on this really, really neat mission trip to Nepal and trekking and backpacking in remote villages. It was very strenuous and taxing. And if my body had not been in the shape that I was in, I would not have been able to be a part of that. And so things like that that the Lord has brought to me. Lighting is so weird. I need to like move over. So anyways, it has been a joy to lean into and try to pray that I would be able to continue to lean into um, being flexible, I think, and not always just, I have an idea and I'm just going to stick to my guns on that idea. But it's okay if the plan might change and it might be a different thing in a different season, and that's okay.
I think that those are great truths to end on, just talking about how God can bring good out of some of the really,
Mm,
really hard things that happen in our lives, and there's hope in that.
yes.
And then also being open, being flexible, allowing God to direct and lead us instead of just being focused
Mhm.
on this is this is my plan and this is what I'm going to do. Um, so thank you so much, Cheryl. This has been
Yes, thank you
such a
for
good
having me.
conversation.
It's been so fun. I appreciate it.
Really enjoyed it. So I just wish you the best. Wish you the best and
Thank
pray for
you.
God's blessings over you and your family.